Just to explain to everybody what I think this is about, so some of you can go start drinking coffee again. I had about 20 requests for interviews today, and obviously I couldn't handle that many. So I decided everybody that was interested in interviewing me, we'd try to get them all together at once, and I try to talk to them, and that's all this is all about. I have absolutely no briefing as such to make and no statements to make. I'm just available for questions. So if anybody didn't understand it that way, well, I apologize, and you're free to do anything, obviously. Roy?
Yeah, Deke, at this stage of the game, we always start thinking about post-recovery plans. And I wonder if you could give us any kind of a fix on, assuming everything goes well, you have a recovery tomorrow, what are the plans for the crew?
Yeah, I just happen to have a draft here in my vest pocket, which we haven't printed yet, but the last thing I got from the recovery guys would be arrival at Ellington at 8 o'clock Sunday morning. Now, the times before that, Roy, I'm not too clear on, but in rough numbers, we'll keep them on the carrier overnight. Tomorrow night, go on into Samoa, pick up a C-140 from there, and then non-stop into Ellington. And those exact times I don't have. But they end up at Ellington at about 8 o'clock on Sunday. We would then start debriefing Sunday afternoon, technical debrief, and all day Monday. I have a program project debrief on Tuesday, follow-on crew debrief Wednesday, and on down the line. I can give you all that detail if you wanted, or just a little.
We would be interested in it, and of course, too, most of the news people in this room would be interested in when would we, do you think, get a chance to talk to them?
Okay, well, let me follow on through then with the rest of this since we're on the subject. Thursday the 23rd, then we would program a photo debrief, whatever science we got, which obviously isn't much in this case, that morning, medical debrief in the afternoon, and then finish the day with working on a pilot report. The same on Friday and Saturday, give them Sunday off. Monday and Tuesday, we'd program systems debriefing, detailed systems debrief with the experts. In this case, of course, we anticipate that this is going to be a fairly lengthy process, considering our problems, whereas on the last missions where things have gone clean, about 1 day has been enough of that. So, as a preliminary, that looks to me like we come out with a press conference on about the 29th, Wednesday the 29th.
Would you think in terms of an earlier news conference than that, just perhaps a short one?
There has been some discussion of that, but I think that, again, is a decision to be made by Dr. Payne and Bob Gilruth. And if somebody decides that it's desirable to fit one in there someplace before that, I'm sure it'll happen. But this is the only plan that I can draw up at this time.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Yeah, Deke, can you give us a fairly thorough rundown of Monday night in the simulator? Gene Cernan and Joe Engel spent the night. What did they do? What kind of problems were they looking at? How long were they in there? That sort of thing.
We've had people in the simulator all night and all day every night and trying to figure out exactly what happened Monday night. At this point, it's got it difficult for me to backtrack. We're in the running right now and have been part of the night on the entry part of the stuff. Essentially what we've been doing in the simulators is looking at what our next milestone is, the things we don't have a good detailed checklist on, and trying to work out the details in the simulator and feed it on up to the crew. I think the things we were working on Monday night, we were concerned about PTC using the LEM instead of the command module, which we hadn't done before, and worked that out in the simulator. Of course, we worked out the AGS PTC thing that we've been doing here the last day on the simulator. We worked out the AGS dips dock burn on the simulator, the one that we made last night. There again, we have contingency procedures for dock dips burns, but we assume you do those with the pings nominally instead of the AGS. So it's these kinds of things that we've had to vary due to the particular situation that we're in, that we've tried to work the details out on the simulator first.
Deke, two questions. First of all, from what you know of the conditions, can you give us some idea of what it's like up there for the men? And secondly, is there anything in particular that's impressed you? They've obviously all done magnificently, but anything in particular that's impressed you about their handling of this emergency?
Well, as far as the conditions, nothing unusual about them. They're a little colder than normal up there, of course. The command module was running about 52 degrees the last count I had. The LEM was reasonably warm. So it's colder than we're used to, and of course with the command module powered down, it's darker than you're used to, but that's no big problem. I think in terms of crew comfort, we don't have any problems. We're in good shape. We've got enough food and water and so forth, and I guess if you want my opinion of how they handled the situation when it happened, they handled it exactly like we'd expect them to. They were about as well on top of it as anybody could be, knowing what we knew, which isn't very much, I'll have to admit. But I think they did everything right within the knowledge that was available to us in a timely fashion, which is what all we expect of them. I think they did a beautiful job of it.
Deke, how is Ken Mattingly's health now? Any signs of rubella?
Well, just talking to him before I walked over here, I still don't see any spots on him. And he seems to be feeling reasonably well. Yes, sir.
Slayton, we've had reports of haggard astronauts spinning wildly off course. How haggard are they, and how wildly were they off course?
That doesn't mean a thing to me. I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't mean to be smart. I really don't know.
Are they haggard?
Are they haggard?
Yeah.
I don't think so. They haven't had as much sleep as we'd like to have them have, but nobody else has either. And I think if you can get 4 hours here and there, well, you're in pretty good shape. I think they're rested enough to do a reasonably good job. The spinning off course thing, I frankly don't understand that. I don't know what that means.
Were they more off course than is normal for a ship returning from the moon?
Off course?
Yes, in other words, they needed a course correction to get back on the corridor.
No, we made a mid-course last night, which is normal. We haven't...
Normal? Was it an abnormal correction?
No, totally not. I guess that's what's confusing me here. There's been nothing abnormal about the trajectory at any time. We were on a hybrid trajectory at the time the incident happened. We burned back onto a free return, and then we made the burn on the loop around PC plus 2 to get us on a faster return. We expected we'd have to make a mid-course on that burn, which is the one we made last night. And you're a little bit out of the quarter until you make that burn, but that burn is insensitive as hell. You can make it about any time and in almost any direction, as long as you're pointing approximately. So as far as trajectory, we haven't been concerned about that at all at any time and still aren't. We may make another mid-course somewhere around 5 hours, someplace in there. It could come out a couple feet per second. Whether we make it or not doesn't make a bit of difference. It just tunes things up a little bit.
How would you evaluate the value of Jim Lovell's previous experience in space and coping with the emergency, and does it raise any thoughts in your mind about the advisability of having an experienced man in the crew in future flights?
Well, that's a tough thing to put a handle on. I guess you aren't experienced in anything until it happens to you. This particular thing hadn't happened to any of us, so he wasn't any more experienced in this particular thing than anybody else. On the other hand, I'm sure the fact that he's been there before is bound to have some benefit. Try to put a number on it, frankly, I can't. But I think we've always felt that we can start in with anybody and train them up to the condition where they can fly a very good mission, and the experience factor isn't all that great. Because if we really didn't have that capability, we wouldn't have flown to begin with anyway. You just have to assume that you can train people to do anything that's required of them on the ground when you're in the space business.
Say you're not concerned about the trajectory. What is your chief concern now in the next 24 hours?
What do they want?
What is your chief concern in the next 24 hours? You say you're not concerned about the trajectory. This is going well. What are the chief concern in the next 24 hours?
The main concerns?
Yeah, what is your chief concern, yes, in the next 24 hours?
Oh, I think I don't have any great concern. We've got some work to do, lots of it, and it's primarily concerned with the entry. We've got an unusual combination of things here. Number one, we have nothing in the service module, which we normally have, to provide sustenance to the command module. Normally, you keep the service module on, which provides you power and oxygen up until somewhere around 30 to 40 minutes ahead of the entry. We haven't got that. So, and we do have the service module on, and it's given us some thermal protection. So we're caught here in one situation of wanting to get rid of the service module reasonably early. On the other hand, we've got to make sure we don't get rid of it too early and give us some thermal problems. Secondly, we want to keep the LEM as long as possible, because this is where we are getting the things we normally get from the service module, at least to a limited extent. So trying to work out this timeline from both ends gets to be a little bit sticky, and we've got a preliminary one that's been worked out yesterday through the night last night. We're simulating it this morning. We hope to have it in pretty good shape by noon today. We may have to do a little more work this afternoon.
Do you expect any problems, in fact, in the jettisoning of either the LM or the service module?
No. Right.
Two questions. Presumably, with your responsibilities for Apollo 14 training, you're already wondering what should be done about that, whether to delay it or not. And a more personal thing, can you tell us if Ken Mattingly is now feeling more friendly disposed towards Chuck Berry?
Well, as far as 14 is concerned, we're pressing on as usual. We've been using the 14 crew to work out some of these procedures that we didn't have a handle on. As far as Ken Mattingly's interface with Chuck Berry, I'd prefer you talk to them about it. I don't think we've got any problem there on the part of either one, however.
Deke, have you figured out yet what you think happened within the service module, what effect it might have, and can you follow that through in terms of the sequence of events as you begin to peel off the LEM, the service module, and prepare for entry?
Our preliminary plan right now is to dump the service module around 4.5 hours and to dump the LEM at about 1 hour. I'd make it clear these are preliminary at this point because we've got a lot of work to do yet. We would like to back the service module jet out farther if we can reasonably, and we'd like to hang on to the LEM as long as possible. And so what these times turn out to be is going to be a function of how well our timeline integrates.
How will you achieve separation, in this case, from the service module and from the LEM?
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, with the LEM attached in the service module, we can just put a little delta V in with the LEM and separate from the service module. That's no problem there. And of course, separating the LEM, we got this pop gun effect. We have a delta P in the tunnel, and as soon as you pop the ring, why, you're going to get a separation of something like 2.5 to 3 feet.
And finally, have you figured out yet what you think happened down there in the service module?
No, I sure don't have any wisdom on that subject at all. There's all kinds of speculation, but I don't think anybody knows the facts, and we probably aren't going to for a while. We hope to get some pictures that might help give a little enlightenment to the subject, but there again, we can't plan too heavily on that either. We'll do the best we can with it.
That knowledge would affect your planning for future missions, wouldn't it?
Oh, it definitely.
You'll have to do systems analysis, pin it down.
No, I don't think there's any question. We have to understand this before we can probably commit too much farther. It's a kind of a failure that can give you a pretty bad day if you don't have the LEM around.
Has there been, or is there likely to be any more discussion about the members of the astronauts' families possibly talking with the astronauts before reentry?
I don't see any particular reason for them to do that. I doubt if we're frankly going to have time, and I'm not sure they even want to. But if they've expressed an interest in doing
they?
this...
You said
pardon?
You're not sure they want to?
I don't think it's even been discussed with them. At least I haven't discussed it with them.
Dr. Payne has, hasn't he?
Pardon?
Dr. Payne has he not?
I don't know.
Number on this, but do you have any idea how many people in and out of NASA, that would be NASA and industry personnel, worked out the solutions to the problems that Apollo 13 encountered in flight? And also, casting back over all that's happened since Monday, if you had 3 decisions to pick out that you think were the key ones, what would they be?
Well, to answer the first question, you're right. There's an awful lot of people who have been working the problem. We've had here, and of course, the whole contractor support base, Grumman, North American, MIT, Ham Standard, everybody that's had a piece of this thing have had their people working the problem. So I'd expect in terms of the numbers, you could say it's about the whole government industry team that's been working Apollo as a steady state process. I don't know what that number is.
Hundreds or thousands, do you think?
Oh, it's thousands. If you want me to pick one, I guess it's somewhere between 50 and 100,000, I suppose. It's awful hard to put a handle on that. You've got to go way down through the primes alone, I guess, come out somewhere in that ballpark.
What was that number?
I'm making a wild guess here. If you want a number, I think we ought to have our PAO people. Howard Gibbons can probably get you a number. I'm not a statistician when it comes to those things. Let's see, your second question was what was the most critical decision point? Oh, that's a tough one to answer. It's kind of like we say when we talk about a mission from takeoff to landing. And in this case, it's kind of been about that. Well, I don't think any decision was really very tough because we didn't have a whole lot of alternatives. Probably the one you'd preferred not to have to make was to essentially crank up the LEM and use that as your prime mode of operation, but that wasn't a very tough decision because we didn't have any choice. So that's kind of been the way, you know, you've got a certain number of options, but not too many, and none of them turn out to be too tough a decision. It's a process of technically figuring out the best way to do something you know you have to do anyhow. But I don't know if I answered your question or not.
Deke, are there reasons other than thermal protection that you have kept the service module for this long? And could you go into what kind of thermal protection it gives, how this works?
Well, the heat shield on the command module, for example, the main heat shield, of course, was not designed to operate in free space for extended periods of time. It's designed for re-entering the Earth. And there was some concern if you jettisoned the service module real early that you'd cold soak that heat shield and possibly get debonding or some other problems. It's just an area that hadn't been looked at in great detail. We understand how it works with the service module on, so for that reason we preferred to keep it. Of course, the other thing you've got is if we've still got the RCS quads on the service module, which are usable. If for some reason you had to use them, you can take in a real extreme case. I gather there's been some hand-wringing about that mid-course last night. Well, man, we could start in, we had the dips. Okay, that didn't work, we got the apps. If that doesn't work, we got RCS on the LEM. If that doesn't work, we still had the quads on the service module. And if that didn't work, we'd have probably gone to the big engine, you know, whether we thought it was going to work or not, if we thought it was important. But before we got to that point, I suspect we'd have taken what we had and come in and entered. It wasn't that big a deal. So that's kind of the factors that entered into it.
Has any decision been made about a second burn? And if that doesn't take place, what difference in terms of distance would it make to the splashdown point?
If we do not make another correction?
Yeah.
I don't think we know that yet. We still got to do some more tracking.
Would it just be a marginal distance, or would it be considerable?
No, I don't think there's any question. We're in a return trajectory right now that's going to be an entirely safe and nice clean, and we'll probably land as close as we're going to land anyway. But probably want to tweak it up. And I don't think we're just going to know that until we spend a lot more time tracking. But it'll be a very small correction if it's any.
Deke, how much concern, if any, do you have for those chunks of debris, things like a 4-inch piece of metal that floated by the window, as it pertains to entry?
I don't think that kind of stuff's going to bother us much because that's all going to be behind us when we get... In fact, the things like that should have disappeared behind us when we made that burn last night. That would have given us enough delta V to separate from whatever might have been floating around up to that point. Now, if you assume that some other things are going to bust loose someplace in the interim, I think we're not really very concerned about that.
Could you give us an idea of the temperatures inside the command module and the LEM? We've gotten some reports that the astronauts had experienced some very cold temperatures. And could you give us a range of the temperatures inside these modules and perhaps of the latest reading?
I didn't come over here with all the numbers on the latest status of the spacecraft, Glenn Lunny and Milt Windler have those. I'll give you my best guess on what I remember on it, and I think the command module was 52, the last data point I had. The exact LEM temperature I don't have a number on, but it's comfortable.
Deke, from LEM separation on down to interface, do you expect this reentry will be quite nominal all the way?
Yes.
There are no special plans being made for that particular area of the flight then?
No, we intend to bring up the pings in the platform and make a normal reentry.
Thank you.
Now, if we, for some reason or another, don't get a good alignment or something, we can always come in on EMS anyway. We think we've got about a 25-mile capability just on EMS alone, so we're really not too concerned about it. But we'd like to have everything going for us we can, obviously, and try to make a good normal entry.
On a related point there, when you have the pop gun effect to separate the LEM from the command module, and you say the separation is just a matter of feet, how do you keep that tail of the kite from crashing into your command module on the way down? Is there anything that you've worked out on that, or is that not a concern?
By feet, I was talking feet per second. So if you get for example, a 2 foot per second separation, you're separating 120 feet every minute.
So you don't see any hazard from this thing being that close? No.
No.
You just mentioned that when the DPS wouldn't have worked, you would have tried the APS, and if that wouldn't have worked, you have to try the reaction control system of this service module. Wouldn't you turn that around and first try the reaction control system before using the APS, because you would have to lose the descent stage then of the LM?
Oh, that's all speculation. The only reason I went through that sequence is to explain to you that this is an ace in the hole way down the stack if you had to use it, which is very, very improbable. If you got to the point where you had, then we'd have got around to worrying about how you were going to do it, and you had all kinds of time to worry about that. So I don't want to mislead you on that subject.
No, I understand that, but it's just that I thought because the descent stage contains all the consumables and so for the hours needed until splashdown, so
yep.
You would rather use reaction control system first before?
Probably, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I didn't mean to outline a program plan here for that operation. I was just trying to make a point here in terms of...
Is there any concern that the heat shield might have been damaged by whatever happened in the service module?
No, don't think so.
Deke, I came in late. You may have gone into this earlier, but have you made any revised plans in view of this situation and no quarantine for what happens after splashdown, where they're going to go after getting on the ship and when they get back here and so forth?
Yeah, I went through that briefly earlier, but the plan is just to stay on the ship overnight and go on into Samoa by chopper, catch a C-140, and straight on back to here. And, of course, no quarantine. Just one good thing came out of this flight anyway.
Deke, will you tell us the attitude of the spacecraft at the 2 points of separation relative to Earth?
At the time we separate
the LEM and the service module.
I don't think we've got that totally worked out yet either, Marvin, but we're talking about a radial separation. The exact attitude, we haven't really got that in our plan yet. But.
How do you see the water situation?
I think we're fat. We got 162 hours, the last count I had, and that doesn't count our 20-pound contingency, so I don't think we have any concern at all about water at this point.
Has a decision been made about wearing the spacesuits during re-entry period?
No, it hasn't. We're still vacillating around on that one. There's some advantages to it. There's a lot of disadvantages, and we've got to do some more stirring around on that subject.
Mattingly wasn't seen around the control room last night during the burn. Does that have any significance?
You say he was or wasn't?
He was not seen.
Oh, he was not seen. Okay, he's probably overworking on these procedures that we're simulating this morning.
What do you see as the most difficult steps on the separations preceding reentry?
There's nothing really very difficult about any one of the procedures by themselves. They're all straightforward, and we know how to... I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you.
They're not difficult, but relatively difficult.
Well, no, I think the point I was making, maybe I didn't make it very well, is that the problem is one of integrating all of these procedures into a reasonable timeline where everything fits, gives the crew adequate time to do everything we have to do. It's not any one procedure by itself that is all that difficult. They're all fairly simple and straightforward, and we know how to do them. It's just the problem of trying to keep the LEM as long as possible. If we have to make a mid-course correction, of course, that, again, adds a little more into the timeline. The fact that we've got to be playing games with the power between the LEM and the CSM. These are the kinds of things that, it's not the procedures, it's the time it takes to do them and trying to fit them into a limited time span here.
An S4B tracking picture taken Monday night showed what appeared like an explosion in the vicinity of the Apollo. Does it have any bearing of your study of what happened?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that? Either my ears are bad or that mic is, I'm sure not getting these questions or everything.
S4B tracking people have taken a picture which showed what appeared to be a bright and increasing spot in the vicinity where the CSM was supposed to be at the time, and there was some speculation that it might have indicated an explosion on the SM.
On the S4B?
They were tracking the S4B, and suddenly in the same vicinity there appeared this bright spot.
I see. I hadn't heard about that. I frankly don't know anything about that.
Deke, I think that he is referring here to a photograph that was made here which shows a cloud around what our people think was the spacecraft in S4B that they speculate it might have been the venting of, at the time the accident occurred, of the oxygen. That's what he's referring to.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm not familiar with that.
We have information on that over at the News Center if you come over after this is over with.
Slayton, nothing seems to be difficult, nothing seems to be of concern. Do you feel the situation has been over-dramatized from the moment of this fuel cells going offline?
I guess I haven't been paying much attention to people's interpretation of what's happening, so I can't answer that question. I would not underestimate our concern. We were damn concerned Monday night, no question about it. But we've got things well under control, have had now since the middle of the morning on Tuesday when things stabilized. And I don't think, sure, we'd like to get that thing back because if things keep going the way they are, we're in beautiful shape and have been. But you can't discount the fact that something else might crap out on you before you get home, you know. So, no, I wouldn't want to minimize the fact that we were concerned. On the other hand, I'd also like to make it clear that as long as things kept going the way they were, once we got a handle on the incident, we weren't concerned about getting the crew home safely.
Is there any discussion about whether the command module hatch will fit okay into the tunnel, having been open this long and so forth? Is this part of the re-entry thoughts and so forth?
We may make a fit check on the thing if we have time, but we're not really very concerned about that, Art. That hatch has been very reliable. It's simple to install, and we think it's a very low probability that that thing won't work as designed.
Deke, again, you may have gone into this before I got here, but what is your latest report on the weather? And is there any possibility that the craft may be enough off course to hit this tropical storm that's running around out there?
The last report I had on the weather was no sweat. It's better than it's been, and it wasn't ever very bad. They've had airplanes flying through the area and haven't been able to find the so-called storm. And right now, it's apparently clear down there.
Duke, do you plan to transmit a new checklist once you do work out these rather complicated procedures?
Yes.
And this will be kind of the first time that they've had such a checklist, and everybody will be kind of, except for the Sims, will be doing it for the first time. And do you have any estimate of when the first of these procedures would start in Central Standard Time, or whatever time you want to name, and when they would end?
No, we're running, we want to run those things end to end on the simulator. We started that first thing this morning, and we're running right now. And we want to go through that full thing from one end to the other. I'm sure we'll run into some things that we don't like, and we'll want to change them and rerun those. So I cannot extrapolate an exact time when we would be able to read those up. But obviously, the sooner the better, within reason. If we can get them up to them this evening, why, we're in good shape. And I'm sure the crew's up there stirring around on their own, looking at a few things too.
Is that about it?
Any other questions?
I think that's about it.
Okay, thank you.